One final thought, though, Mr. Speaker. One final thought, though. Canada ain't broke, though I will admit we may be a bit woke. Mr. Speaker, colleagues, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, too. May we all get a Christmas card from a Randy or two.
Matt,
I have no idea.
Was he a liberal or a conservative?
I think he's a conservative, but it's still funny.
Well, okay. First of all, I used to be a poet. No one will be surprised. I used to be everything, and that's why I'm on this show. And these guys always rhyme, but their problem is the other element, is the scanning, the meter. They will jam 100 words into a line where 17 should be, and and still think they've brought off a wonderful, witty, poetic piece of verse.
Right.
So all the things they were smiling at and applauding in Walter Kirn universe were fails. Get your poetry to be scannable and your lines to be at least roughly the same length.
Yeah, but doesn't that make it funnier? It makes it a little funnier for me.
Yeah, the guy is so satisfied with his performance, though, and the people are just. There was a guy there with eyebrows that you can see at 100 yards, rolling his eyebrows, just completely delighted. None of it was delightful, but I have no idea what the content meant. What I will say is that we don't get to do this with our own government. We don't get this sort of aquarium eye view where we don't really, we don't really know the people, and we can just assess it as though we're like a Martian ambassador. And if I was the Martian ambassador to Canada looking at them all, I'd say, your finance minister just resigned. She was supposed to present the budget. She didn't. You're facing these tariffs, which look like they could be ruinous for you if you don't do anything about them. And you're turning it into a children's book. That means to me, you're screwed. Okay.
Yes.
If I had to run out to the phone and report to the mothership, it's the strangest thing. Their party is falling apart. Their government is falling apart. Their economy is falling apart. And they're laughing at very bad poetry. And they're completely contented with themselves. This has Titanic vibes. You know what I mean? This is a toast to the Queen, and you just see the water coming up to their waists.
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly they're playing the violin on the deck. Look, the news out of Canada is grave.
He was a liberal, someone tells us.
Yeah,
see, Matt?
Exactly.
That's how bad we see. Remember when he said we're a bit woke? He was willing to concede that.
Yes.
In other words, the reason he was being so jocular and amusing and dinner theater and Dr. Seuss, as someone said, which was right on, is that he's on the losing side and is facing the obliteration of his party's influence and rule. And this is the best he's got. We're a little woke.
I mean, you might as well just take it all off and start dancing at that point, which is what that's the Canadian version of what that was, I think. Right. And to be serious, I was reading the CBC account of what's going on, and there were obviously there's a lot of sort of grave signs of defections and that sort of thing. The one that I thought was striking was from the Québécois bloc. I think his name is Yves-François Blanchet or Blanchet or whatever. But basically said this government's over, which is a fairly extreme thing to say. And these sort of calls to have elections immediately. I mean, I think it was expected that this would be next October, but there are sort of rumors that he's considering his options. That was another thing that I saw in the news today. So the ground is kind of coming out from underneath them. Can we watch that clip? Is that possible? Is that let's see. Yeah,
Trudeau's government is over. He must acknowledge that and act accordingly. I believe that the departure of his so important ally, Minister of Finances, Vice First Minister, Prime Minister, is the end of this government. And that at the latest in the beginning of 2025, the Prime Minister should go to the General Governor and ask for the dissolution of the Parliament in order for Quebecers and Canadians to compose a new Parliament that will have the mandate to deal with the real crisis at hand, which is the most important crisis in terms of diplomacy and trade between Canada and the United States in recent history. Somebody needs a mandate, and it goes through a new Parliament.
all right.
So Canada is like the public access channel version of America. Okay. America with a 10th, 1/20th the viewers and 1/50th the budget.
Fresh air by Canada.
Right. And no energy drinks, apparently. I mean, what's amazing is that you can be the Quebecois member of parliament and your English can still be that of maybe a first-year immigrant. You got
to lay it on thick. I mean, right?
Right.
Isn't that, yeah.
Right. And so what I saw there as Martian ambassador reporting back to the mothership is a guy trying to get these Canadians who are all joking around and Seuss-like and acting like they're in a pub, and they're being, I would say, rather British in their comportment. But this guy coming from the French tradition, the somewhat more serious tradition, is like, what are these people doing? Something terrible is happening. We're facing this giant economic challenge and financial challenge, and the government just fell apart. Do they realize that? Why aren't they acting like it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Justin Trudeau, who was such an asset for Canada as a PR mechanism, I guess, for years and years and years.
But for years and years and years, to me, he's looked like the YA young adult version of a prime minister. You know what I mean? He also, I think, mishandled COVID pretty terribly there.
Oh my God! No,
and then he mishandled the protests over the vaccine pretty terribly. And I don't think I can remember when he had a master stroke or success, except with his hair, except with his comportment. He seems to always be in, losing weight a little bit more, in fact. And his hair is perfect and his dress is perfect. But
yeah, he's like the werewolf in London.
This is before things got serious, in other words. This is before COVID. This is the long, silly period that preceded what happened afterwards. And this is when they installed the Macrons and the Trudeaus and all of those types, and mostly on the basis of how cute and next generation they were.
Yeah, so we have a listener, a watcher here, Mika, who's asking, so much news and you dwell on this. What's your point? Well, okay, our point is the government in Canada is about to fall. It was not falling previously because prior to some significant developments in global politics that probably began with some of the overreaches during COVID, the populist backlash, the things like the trucker protests and some other things. As Walter says, if you could be good looking and sort of fulfill a cookie cutter neoliberal political program that you did not have to think about at all because it was it was already pre-prescribed. These people, these leaders they were all identical, basically policy-wise, from Obama to Macron. Clinton was one of the first ones. David Cameron.
Let's call them the sons of Tony Blair. You know,
right? The sons of Tony Blair, and they're all WEF, World Young Global Leaders.
And what was the Jacinda, whatever her name is, in New Zealand?
In New Zealand, yeah. Was she one of them? I can't remember. I'll look it up. Hang on a second. But there's so many of them. I mean, there was the Queen of Denmark. There's
the Mod Squad.
The Mod Squad, exactly.
The Davos Mod Squad.
The Davos Mod Squad, and Trudeau, what was really, especially after Trump got elected, he became almost like the substitute receptacle of press worship in the United States. Because it used to be whenever we had a new president elected, the press would just drop to its knees and fawn over whoever got elected, especially if it was somebody young, who could be shoehorned into that John F. Kennedy prototype, like Bill Clinton. The press went absolutely bonkers when Clinton got elected.
I have to call out Tyler McConnell. He has the best epithet here: the eyes wide shut people.
The eyes wide shut.
the people who, like Tom Cruise, would have showed up at a shadowy, villa in the outskirts of town where models dance naked and a dark lord with a hood wraps his cane and chants backward satanic, verses. These were the eyes wide shut people for sure.
Yeah, Forum for Young Global Leaders. Let's see who else was on that list. Well, I'll call it up in a second here, but yeah, there were so many of them, and Trudeau basically he stepped into that role. 2016, 2017 was when he really became a star here in the United States, because Trump had been elected. We needed to focus on something positive in the media. And remember, all those celebrities were talking about moving to Canada after Trump got elected. And there was that moment where the immigration page crashed on election night in 2016, the Canadian immigration page. God. A lot of this had to do with Trudeau. Is this perception that this young, handsome, in control, progressive person was in office. And what killed this whole thing, not just for Trudeau, but for, I think, a lot of these leaders around the world, was the revelation that they were willing to go straight to 11 on the authoritarian scale whenever they got into trouble. And, for Trudeau, it was the way they handled the banker protest situation, but also things like, we talk a lot about censorship on this program. Canada has the most horrifying censorship plans of any of the countries that we talk about. And, even putting England to shame, they have a bill that I think is probably going to fail now, C-63, which, envisioned putting people under house arrest for things they haven't even said yet. That's still an active bill in Canada.
I still remember the show when we discussed that. It involved neighbors narking on you and some process by which you would be judged likely to commit thought crime. And speech crime. But let's just stop for a moment for those who are waiting for the drone part of the show. I know that's more exciting, and believe me, you're going to get your money's worth when we get there, because I'm loaded for bear. But it's important to see that when Trump was elected this last time, it is the exact opposite of what happened the time before. The time before, we had all these people in their ascendancy, okay? They were the incoming class. Trump looked like grouchy, scary populist from hell. And now he hasn't even been inaugurated. It's weeks still. And here goes Canada. Here goes their hood ornament WEF leader. And it seems that in England, Starmer's in trouble too.
Which they
and-
told us he wasn't, by the way, is pretty recently
Yeah.
here in the States. Mhm.
Well, they always tell you somebody's feeling perfectly right before they collapse. You know, it's why not? Remember, it's the Seltzer poll in Iowa. Remember, the very weekend before you're humiliated, you get your best polling result ever from the best pollster. But anyway, it's legitimate to say that underneath all the smoke and all the strange stories that we're facing in America, abroad, let's check the actual effect of our Trump election, or of our presidential election. Abroad, things are starting to change, and change quickly.
Right. Yes.
And this all goes back to a threat from Trump. Remember, this is all about the tariffs.
Yeah, it's all about the tariffs and the reading between the lines, because no one really has been able to articulate for me what she means by we have to take this seriously and we can't afford any gimmicks. It sounds like what Christie was saying was that we need to make this go away, and so this tariff threat before it becomes damaging, because Trump is basically threatening a trade war with Canada. And look, this shit is funny a little bit. I'm sorry, it's not in a way, because
it's completely funny, because what Trump is threatening is to push over their house of cards, which is already tilting and has been for a while. And they're not well financially in Canada. They've got all our problems and worse, housing shortages, immigration crisis, crime, all papered over with a kind of ultra woke social justice veneer that people find increasingly a lot of people find increasingly noxious and irrelevant to their real lives. And so Trump is just, with the tariffs, he just is going bink, and there it goes. And he makes a joke about the 51st state. Today there are memes, with Elon Musk saying, so how much are you going to, how much is it going to be? What's your asking price? Like, the Great Canadian Fire Sale.
Yeah, and the way I described it in my piece is that Trudeau is sort of uniquely toolless in a troll war. Almost
Right.
Anybody could handle it better than he could, but anyway, it's not going to happen. We should move on to the drones.
Yes.
But if the government should fall in the middle of the show, we'll come back to it. But okay, so drones. There's a big new theory